You will never be able to convince me that you don't see an attack coming. Maybe you only had seconds, but somewhere in the incredible brain that we have in our heads, we know what is about to happen. When the largest animal on Earth turns to face you, ears flared out to the side and its weight shifting ominously, your brain is already taking in information to save your life. Fight or flight takes over, but there is another reaction. A third option that can be significantly more deadly or equally capable of saving our lives. Freeze. So what about when all of that happens? An elephant shouts his warning, charges, time slows down while everything is happening all in a rush, and yet your feet are firmly planted on the ground. Like you're a small tree in the path of that barreling elephant, angry and with his eyes locked on you. You stand frozen before being thrown to the ground, and then the fight is on. Not to get the elephant off of you, or even to get away from the elephant. No. The fight is against the pain, against the time. It is a fight for your own life. Welcome back to Tragedy with a View. I am your host, Kayla, and welcome to our free Solo Friday episode where I venture out on my own without a co-host and provide you with a short story to be enjoyed while you are waiting on the episodes that I co-host with my friends. I have two things to ask before we get into this episode. One, be sure to check out our Patreon. We do have a $1 tier at this point, and that $1 does get you access to the exclusive episodes. Right now there's 2 of those, but we're going to have a third coming in June. Second, please take a moment, if you have not already, to leave a review. On Spotify, you just have the option to leave like a star rating. And on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a rating as well as a written review. And the written review really helps me to know what I'm doing, so that way I know what you like. I can do more of that. It lets me know what I can do better and improve on. And it would just mean so much to me in this very small but growing podcast. And I also love to hear from you guys. So please take a moment to do that. The last thing I'm going to say is that this episode is graphic, especially when we get into the injuries. So beware of that. So we are going to Tanzania, which is a beautiful and wild country of Africa located on the far east side next to the Indian Ocean and just south of the equator line. To the north is Lake Victoria, Uganda, and Kenya. To the west is Rwanda, Burundi, Lake Tanganyika, and towards the south is Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique, and Lake Nyasa. It is home to Africa's highest mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro, at 19,340 feet or 5,895 meters, and it is also home to the world's second deepest lake, Lake Tanganyika, which is 4,710 feet or 1,436 meters deep. Because the East African Rift runs through the country north to south, the terrain varies greatly and holds chains of mountains, one of which you will find an active volcano called Ol Danyolongai, and I'm gonna butcher how you say this, the Ngorongoro which is the world's largest volcanic depression, which is also called a caldera. Tanzania holds the second largest freshwater lake, which is Lake Victoria. And while there are many great things that Tanzania holds claim to, it has no major rivers flowing through it. Because of the vast terrain, the weather can change from area to area greatly, but they also have one thing in common, and that description includes the word warm. The temperature throughout the year really only varies by about 9 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius, and the ground rarely sees frost. There is a rainy season, and depending on where you are located in Tanzania, you may see somewhere in the range of 20 inches or 51 centimeters of rain per year to 60 inches or 152 centimeters of rain per year. The volcanic activity in the area has caused the ground to be very fertile, but it doesn't drain well. So when the rainy season begins, there is more swampland, meaning that there is less human settlements and therefore more animals and wildlife, which is a huge attraction. Wildebeest, zebra, giraffes, buffalo, gazelle, elands, dik-diks, kudu, hyenas, wild dogs, lions, leopards, cheetahs, crocodiles, hippopotamus, rhinoceros, elephants, chimpanzees, 1,500 different kinds of birds, and a significant number of lizards and snakes all call this land home. Roughly 25% of Tanzania is protected land and conservation areas, including Gombe National Park, Serengeti National Park, Solis Game Reserve, Ngorongoro Conservation Area, and Kilimanjaro National Park. Tom Seibel was born in 1952 in Chicago and had 5 older siblings and 1 younger. He studied at the University of Illinois and then moved to Silicon Valley in California, where he took a job with Oracle, which is a software company. When Tom had an idea for a software platform to help companies manage customer interactions, this idea was shot down by the founder of Oracle, Larry Ellison. So Tom set off on his own to do this very thing. He founded Seibel Systems, and in a really interesting turn of events, Oracle ended up buying the software platform from Tom for $5.8 billion in 2006. As a vacation in August of 2009, Tom and his wife and their 2 daughters decided to go to Tanzania to experience the safari and some different tours and see the wildlife that Africa has to offer. They spent 3 days touring the Serengeti in the back of a Land Rover, and by the 4th day, everyone was feeling pretty tired, not only from their travels to get to Tanzania, but also the energy spent in excitement from seeing some of these wild animals, such as lions and zebras, up close. On the 4th morning, while his family decided to take a rest and not do any safaris that day, Tom decided to go on a walking safari with a guide. The safari he was going on was considered to be short and safe, but as most of African safari guides do, the guide decided to carry protection as a precaution in case anything happened. The rifle that the guide carried with him was a .470 caliber double-barrel rifle, and the bullets were the size of a roll of dimes, which is about the length of your pointer finger and as thick as your thumb. Tom showed up at 6:30 in the morning with a camera, and his guide spent some time with him that morning discussing the differences between a tour in a vehicle and a ground tour, and some of the things that he told him included directions on what to do if they were charged. It was incredibly important that they stand their ground because a lot of animals do bluff charges, and if they turned and ran, there was a lot higher likelihood that they would get run down and injured. In front of the lodge that Tom was staying in, there was a watering hole, and because, of course, animals need a lot of water, those watering holes were always very active and highly sought after. Immediately, Tom saw a herd of water buffalo, which, much like American buffalo and American bison and muskox, they have short tempers and poor eyesight and have the tendency to charge first and ask questions later. Because of this, Tom and his guide kind of crept around the herd, staying at a safe distance so that way they wouldn't set off any of the animals. It was a quiet morning. There was barely a breeze, and just as the sun was coming up, and about 15 minutes after seeing the water buffalo, they came across a herd of elephants that were standing roughly 200 yards away. Now, we all know that elephants are very large animals, weighing in at 6 tons or 13,227 pounds. They can stand up to 11 feet tall or 3.5 meters and are 19 to 24 feet long or 5.7 to 7.3 meters long. There are roughly 415,000 elephants roaming in herds across 37 countries within Africa. Savanna elephants in particular tend to be larger, and their tusks, which is actually an incisor tooth, grow throughout their life. And a real quick fun fact about the elephant's tusks, is that they have a dominant side, much like humans do with our hands. Their tusks can be used as a tool to dig in the dirt, lift something up, and pull bark from trees. And typically one of these tusks is shorter than the other, and this side that has the shorter tusk is the dominant side as it gets worn down because of its more frequent use. Elephants use their trunk as a form of communication, as well as a tool to grab and maneuver objects, food, and play. Their ears allow them to radiate heat away from their bodies to cool them down in the hot African sun, and their front legs are noticeably longer than their hind legs. Typically, a herd of elephants includes around 10 females with their babies, and the male elephants only interact with the herds when it's mating season. So the elephants that Tom and his guide came across were mostly adult females, and each of them had a baby or two with them that were minding their own business, eating some branches and leaves and grazing on the foliage they had available. Stopping to observe them, Tom and his guide felt that they were at a comfortable distance, but all of a sudden, one of the adult females became extremely agitated. She turned towards the two men with her ears stretched out to either side to make herself look bigger, and she lifted her trunk into the air and bellowed a warning. It took a second for the elephant to make the decision that these two men were predators and that she was going to be the one to deal with them. Just as what she was doing began to sink in to Tom and the guide, she charged. The yards between them shrank in what felt like too little time, and Tom, who had listened very carefully to his guide, stood his ground. He watched the guide as the elephant covered the distance between them. The guide had the rifle shouldered, so he had it up with the butt of the gun against his shoulder, double barrels pointing at the charging elephant, and as the yards dwindled, he didn't shoot. 40 yards. 20. 10. Still, the shot from the rifle doesn't ring out. Then, as the yards snap down into single digits, the guide finally takes his shot and misses. The elephant is now to the men, and she first tosses the guide to the side with her trunk and then barrels up to Tom, where suddenly she stops. She is so close to Tom that he could reach out his arm and touch her if he wanted to, but he doesn't. He stands there just long enough to hope that she will step away when she barges right into him. She knocks Tom to the ground, where she leans forward to press her head and tusks on top of him. Flinging her head side to side, she rolls Tom back and forth on the ground, and this is when a tusk punctures Tom's left thigh before she rips it free from his leg, tearing muscle, skin, and tendons in the process. Tom tries to focus on protecting his head with his arms, but his body is getting stepped on and stabbed. He loses himself in the pain and tries to remember anything that could help him in this moment. And then he realizes that he isn't being rattled around anymore. Blinking his eyes open, Tom is surprised to see the air dusty with the dirt and sand, but the elephant is gone. Tom looks over to see the guide in a fetal position about 12 yards or 30 feet away. When Tom called to him, he was able to get up and help right away. The guide calls the lodge, who then brought out several pickup trucks to help, but it was still 3.5 hours until Tom was able to be moved. Tom had his left thigh gored open, his right leg was shattered, and his ankle was holding on by just a couple of tendons. He also had broken 6 ribs and tore open his shoulder. The guide did not get out with just scrapes and bruises. He also had broken ribs, which, if you have ever broken a rib, you know how bad that it hurts. And I mean, literally to do anything, including breathe, and pain medicine just doesn't seem to touch it. So once in the bed of the truck, Tom was taken to meet with a helicopter, who then flew him to Nairobi's Aga Khan University Hospital. To the best they could, they cleaned Tom's wound, placed his legs in stabilizers, loaded him up with painkillers, and then he was on a plane flying back to the United States. For the 20-hour flight back to San Jose, California, a nurse accompanied him, and there was a bit of a miscalculation in the necessary medicine, and after 10 hours, he was out of morphine. 15 hours into the flight, and he was out of IV fluids. For the remainder of the flight, Tom continued to lose blood and therefore decline. And by the time that he had arrived at the hospital in San Jose, he had lost a significant amount of blood. Now, I want to note here that at one point he does say he lost 2/3 of his blood during the flight, but I also believe that if you lose more than 40% of blood, you need like immediate medical attention and a blood transfusion to prevent you from dying. Not that there aren't outliers. I just want to make it clear that that's the information that I'm seeing from Tom versus the general medical information that is understood. So I'm not discounting what he claims. I'm just putting the disclaimer on there that he was very, very, very close to dying. So immediately upon arriving at the hospital in San Jose, Tom was given blood, fluids, and more pain medicine, and then rolled into surgery. Once he was out of surgery, he was placed in the ICU for several days, where he then had more surgeries. Tom had over 16 surgeries in the first year in order to save his leg, and initially doctors told him that he would be lucky to have a leg survive at all, and he would likely never walk again. He wore an Elisivor external fixator that, if you don't know what this is, like me, and you have to look it up, it is that cage-like contraption that wraps around a limb and has like what looks like bolts coming out of your leg or out of your arm that are then attached to the outer contraption. And this device is made to help mend, lengthen, and reshape bones. In Tom's case, this bone was his tibia, which was located between the ankle and the knee. A fist-sized section of bone from Tom's pelvis was used to help rebuild his ankle in his right leg, and he was bound to an electronic wheelchair, as you can imagine, with both legs sustaining very different but also very severe injuries. Throughout this process, Tom fired any doctor who didn't meet his condition with an option for progress to get him back to the activities he loved. And this is a great reminder that doctors work for us. And we do not have to stay with one that is providing a service that doesn't meet your needs, whether those are physical, emotional, spiritual, etc. So Tom was told again and again that he would need to have his legs amputated, but things changed when Tom ended up being able to contact the maker of the Ilisarov device, and he asked them for the best doctors to install these in the country. And as luck would have it, not one, but two were located about an hour drive away. And thanks to all of this, he was predicted rather early on that he would be able to walk, run, play golf, and even sail competitively. Although this was a very long process to get there because Tom wasn't able to walk for 4 years. After the first year, Tom continued to have surgeries, and the last number that I saw was 20. But Tom says that the event had a really positive effect on his life. He began to appreciate life more and the people who were in it. He has gotten into the best shape of his life, and he has put work into maintaining healthy relationships with his wife, kids, and friends. He became motivated again to build a second software company, this time called C3IoT, which is a software platform for AI, and it is now his second billion-dollar company. C3 focuses on using AI to help use energy grids to cut greenhouse gas emissions and optimize the energy that companies are already using. Tom, while very wealthy, had taken action to try to do something good with his money. He experienced the impact of drugs while he was visiting a home in Montana and pursued the meth project to help balance the meth addiction in the Western United States. While many programs focus on health effects that drugs have on people, Tom's project found that most users, at least in their demographic area, start using between the ages of 12 and 17. So they focused on what 12 to 17-year-olds focus on, their looks. Ads and lectures would include discussions about how meth would give you acne breakouts, it would cause your teeth to fall out, and you would lose all of the fat on your face, giving you a very pale, sick, and starved look. To end this episode, Tom has had some encouraging words that I want to pass along to you, because in a world where a lot of people let fear and social exclusion hold them back, Tom wants you to go for it. And I want you to go for it. And if you have an idea or something that you're passionate about and it's something that you have the means to do, you already have what you need to take it all the way. You just need to go for it and trust the process, and also trust that the process is probably going to take longer than you think it is. The last piece of advice that Tom has is don't go to Africa, but we're not going to tell my fiance that because I want to go. So thank you for listening. Check out our Patreon. Be sure to leave a review, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe from wherever you listen to Tragedy with a View. To get access to ad-free episodes, bonus content, and more, please join us on our Patreon. The link will be in the show notes. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And to share a story of your own, send us a Campfire Confessional email at tragedywithaview@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.